Now we're going to take a look at example 2. We're going to solve a quadratics using tables. So let me let the computer read the first problem to you. Nope, didn't quite do that.
How can you use a table to find the solutions of x squared minus 7 times x plus 6 equals 0?
Okay, so in order to do that, we're going to take this expression, so just the side with the quadratic, and we're going to enter that into our calculator menu on the graphing menu as we did before. We can then get to a table by pressing second in graph. And when we get to our table, what we're going to look out for is the different values of x that make our y1 equal to 0. So we can see in this case, there are two values of x that make y equal 0. So x equals 1 and x equals 6. So these are the solutions to our equation. So x equals 1, x equals 6 are our solutions. So this is a great example where things work out lovely, nice integer solutions. However, that's not always the case. So let's take a look at an example where that doesn't happen.
How can you use a table to estimate the solutions of 3 times x squared plus 5 times x minus 2 equals 0?
And notice that the word estimate is used, and that's because things aren't going to be so pretty for this quadratic. So again, we're going to type our equation into the calculator in the graph menu. So we would type this part into the y equals menu. And then we're going to create our table. And we can see that our first solution is clear, right? This x equals negative 2 will give us a y of 0. However, our second solution, not so clear. And we notice that the table goes from negative to positive. So somewhere in between there must be a 0. But in order to figure out where, we're going to have to refine our interval a little bit. So we're going to have to go to our settings menu and change our interval from counting by ones, which is kind of the default, to maybe counting by 0.25. I probably would have made this a little lower, but that will give us some sense. So here we're counting by 0.25, and we can see we have a better idea. So now we're going from negative 0.56 to positive 1.25. So we know that our solution's somewhere in between here, and 0 is a little closer to 0.25 than 0.5, so we could approximate that our solution is approximately 0.3. It's not an exact solution by any means, but it's a start, and we can get close to our solution. Of course, graphing, I think, and using that zeros feature on the calculator, a lot more precise. So now let's take a look at your try it. So we have to find the solution for 4x squared plus 3x minus 7 equals 0 using the table. So for this, we're going to use technology. So I'm going to go back to the free graphing calculator that you can find on your PART practice test. So you just go online and search for PART practice test in Algebra 1. So I'm going to type in the expression that we were given. So I'm going to clear this out and press the clear button. And let me just zoom in too so we see our full calculator. Okay. So we were given 4x squared plus 3x minus 7 is equals 0. But I'm not going to put that part. I'm just going to put the quadratic equation side, or the quadratic expression. And then to get to our table, I'm going to press second and table. And now I'm going to try to scroll through and see which values will get of x will give me y equals 0. So we definitely see 1 right here. So at x equals 1, that's one of our solutions. And then kind of scroll through my values of x. So here it's negative. I see it's getting positive again. So it's probably somewhere between negative 1 and negative 2. We need to refine it a bit, so we need to change our scale. I'm going to go to second and window, which will give me my table set. And here, this delta table, or TBL, is my increment. So I'm going to change that from 1 to maybe like 0.1 to make it more precise. And then I'm going to go back to my table. So it's going to allow me to zero in a little bit more. So right here, let's see that it's going from negative to positive all of a sudden. So my answer must be somewhere in between. And these are almost exact opposites. I would guess that my answer is probably negative 1.75. Now your book asks you to give it to the nearest tenth. So if I'm going to approximate, I guess I'll round up a little bit. Trying to see. It's a 0.7. Well, it's probably a little closer to this value than that. So it's probably closer to negative 1.7. So if I had to approximate, I would say x equals negative 1.7. And my other answer, again, was that x equals 1. So I'm going to go back. So you can draw, you can give a couple of examples if you create a table. I'm going to just mention another strategy you can do, if you, especially if you're using technology. You could put like using calculator. So I'm just indicating that's how I found my solution. It's x equals 1 and x equals negative 1.7. And I'm just going to double check. I believe it was all negatives, right? I'm not going crazy. So yeah, I was in a negative. So that's it. So that's it for finding using a table to solve for quadratics. So you're going to have a few more of these to do a little later on. But any questions, feel free to reach out to me.